The summer heat hit me like a wall as I stepped off the military transport at Fort Bragg. After 15 months in Afghanistan, even the sweltering North Carolina weather felt like home. I was exhausted, dust-covered, and desperate for a real shower. But first I had to deal with the gnawing anxiety that had been building since I'd gotten that last automated alert from my bank. My name is Alexandra Chen, Alex to most people, and I'd spent the last 5 years as a military intelligence officer. While I was good at my job, analyzing data, tracking patterns, documenting everything, I never thought I'd have to use those skills to investigate my own sister. The first sign something was wrong came 3 months ago. I was checking my account balances during some downtime at the base when I noticed unusual transfer patterns. Large sums moving between accounts, investments being liquidated. But the satellite connection was spotty, and by the time I could really dig into it, the trail had gone cold. "Your sister has power of attorney," the bank representative had said when I called. "Everything appears to be properly authorized." I'd given Karen power of attorney before my deployment, along with access to all my accounts. It had seemed like the smart choice at the time. She was the responsible one, successful real estate agent, perfect house in the suburbs, 2 kids, charity fundraiser organizer. Who better to handle my affairs while I was overseas? "Don't worry about a thing," she'd said, having me goodbye at the airport. "I'll keep everything safe until you're back." Now, standing in the base parking lot waiting for my Uber, I pulled up my banking app. My hands shook slightly as I logged in, hoping against hope that I'd been wrong, that there was some explanation. $248.13. I stared at the number, my vision blurring slightly. The savings account that had held over $180,000. My entire life savings, including combat pay and investments, was nearly empty. The investment accounts showed 0 balances, everything I'd worked for over the past decade gone. The Uber driver must have noticed something was wrong. "You okay, ma'am?" he asked as I slid into the backseat. "Fine," I managed, giving him Karen's address. I planned to surprise her with my early return, but now the surprise was on me. As we drove through the familiar streets of Fayetteville, I thought about everything that money had represented. It wasn't just savings, it was freedom, security, my dream of finally buying my own home after years of deployments and temporary housing. I'd lived frugally, invested wisely, saved every bonus and hardship payment, and Karen had known exactly how much that money meant to me. The car pulled up to her house, a gorgeous colonial with perfect landscaping and a brand new Tesla in the driveway. I noticed the Tesla wasn't the only thing that was new. Fresh paint, new windows, a completely redesigned front entrance with expensive stonework. "Nice place," the driver commented as I got out. "Your sister must be doing well." "Yeah," I said quietly, "really well." I rang the doorbell, adjusting my uniform and wondering if I looked as shell-shocked as I felt. After a moment, Karen opened the door, her perfect smile freezing slightly when she saw me. "Alex, you're back early. We weren't expecting you for another month." She pulled me into a hug that felt more like a restraint than an embrace. "Surprise," I said flatly, pulling away. "We need to talk about my accounts." Her smile didn't waver, but something flickered in her eyes. Of course, but you must be exhausted. Come in. Let me get you some coffee first." The inside of the house had been completely renovated since my last visit. New hardwood floors gleamed under designer light fixtures. The kitchen featured high-end appliances I knew hadn't been there before. Everything screamed money, my money. Karen busied herself with the coffee maker, chattering about neighborhood gossip and her kids' activities. I sat at the marble island, letting her talk while I took in more details. The Cartier watch on her wrist. The Channel bag casually tossed on the counter. The brochure for a luxury cruise line tucked under a stack of mail. "So," she said finally, sliding a mug toward me. "You mentioned the accounts." "They're empty," I said simply, watching her face. "Every single one." "Want to explain what happened to $180,000? She sighed, looking more annoyed than guilty. "I was hoping to have this conversation after you'd settled in. Things have been complicated while you were gone." "Complicated?" I repeated. "Complicated is having trouble paying bills. Complicated is unexpected expenses. This isn't complicated, Karen. This is theft." "Don't be so dramatic," she scoffed. "I'm your sister. I was handling your affairs like you asked. And frankly, I needed the money more than you did. You're single, no kids, living on base. What were you going to do with all that money anyway? I stared at her, stunned by the casual entitlement in her voice. This was the sister I'd looked up to my whole life. The one who taught me about saving money and making smart choices. It was my money, I said, my voice shaking slightly. Everything I've worked for. My future. She rolled her eyes, and I put it to good use. Look around. The house value has nearly doubled with these renovations. Once the market picks up, I'll be able to pay you back. Eventually. Eventually? I stood up, my chair scraping against the expensive floors. You stole from me, Karen. While I was deployed in a war zone, you were here spending my life savings on luxury cruises and home renovations. The cruises were necessary for networking, she said defensively. I've made some amazing real estate contacts, and Brian's business is about to take off. We just needed some capital to get things moving. Brian. Of course. Her husband's string of failed business ventures had been draining their finances for years. But I'd never thought they'd stoop to this. I want it back, I said firmly. All of it, now. Karen laughed, but there was an edge to it. Don't be absurd. The money's gone, invested in things that will pay off in the long run. Besides, what are you going to do? Sue your own sister? She said it like a challenge, clearly confident in her position. After all, she had the power of attorney. She had invested the money in ways that would be hard to untangle, and she knew how much I valued family, how much I hated confrontation. What Karen didn't know was that I wasn't the same person who left for Afghanistan 15 months ago. Military intelligence had taught me more than just data analysis. It had taught me to trust my instincts, to gather evidence, and most importantly, to plan for every contingency. I'd been documenting everything since those first suspicious transfers. Every transaction, every timestamp, every paper trail. I had copies of all the original account agreements specifying that power of attorney was for emergency management only, not for personal use. I had records of purchases and transfers that clearly showed patterns of personal spending rather than account management. And I had one more thing Karen didn't know about yet. Actually, I said quietly, pulling out my phone, I am going to do something about it. I've already filed a formal complaint with the State Bar Association regarding your real estate license. Misappropriation of client funds is a serious ethics violation. The color drained from her face. You wouldn't. I also have documentation of every fraudulent transfer, every misuse of power of attorney. The police and FBI are very interested in financial crimes against deployed service members. It's a federal offense. She gripped the counter, her perfect facade cracking. Alex, be reasonable. We're family. You can't do this to me. Family? I laughed bitterly. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't take advantage of trust. You did this to yourself, Karen. I can explain everything, she said quickly. Just give me time to sort things out. Please don't do anything rash. I stood up, shouldering my military backpack. You've had 15 months to sort things out. Time's up. As I walked toward the door, she called after me, her voice rising with panic. Where are you going? We need to talk about this. I turned back one last time, taking in the luxurious house bought with my stolen savings, the sister who betrayed my trust so completely. I'm going to see Mom and Dad. I'm sure they'll be very interested to hear about their perfect daughter's creative financing. The look of absolute terror on her face told me everything I needed to know. Karen had built her whole life on appearances, on being the successful, responsible sister. Now that carefully constructed image was about to come crashing down. I stepped out into the summer heat, pulling out my phone to call our parents. Behind me, I could hear Karen's voice rising in hysteria as she called her husband, probably trying to warn him about what was coming. But it was too late. The wheels were already in motion, and no amount of damage control could stop what was about to happen. Sometimes karma needs a little help, and I was more than ready to give it a push. What I didn't know then was that this was just the beginning. Karen's betrayal ran deeper than missing money, and the next 24 hours would reveal secrets that would shake our family to its core. The drive to our parents' house was surreal. Mom and Dad still lived in the same modest ranch house where Karen and I had grown up. A stark contrast to the luxury my sister now surrounded herself with. As I pulled into the familiar driveway, I noticed Mom's prized rose bushes needed trimming, something Karen was supposed to help with regularly. It was just one more small betrayal in what was becoming a mountain of lies. Mom opened the door before I could even knock, her face lighting up at the sight of me in uniform. "Alex, why didn't you tell us you were coming home?" She pulled me into a tight hug, and for a moment I felt like a kid again, safe in her arms. "It's complicated, Mom," I said, pulling back to look at her face. "Is Dad home? We need to talk about something important." Dad was in his usual spot in the den, reading glasses perched on his nose as he worked on a crossword puzzle. He stood up when he saw me, emotion flickering across his weathered face. "Welcome home, soldier." I hugged him hard, remembering how proud he'd been at my commissioning ceremony. Dad had served in the Marines himself, and he understood sacrifice in a way Karen never had. "Sit down, both of you," I said softly. "There's something you need to know about Karen." Over the next hour, I laid it all out: the stolen money, the fraudulent transfers, the abuse of power of attorney. I showed them the documentation on my laptop, walking them through the trail of evidence I gathered. Mom's face grew paler with each revelation. Dad's jaw tightened, his hands clenching into fists on his knees. "But that's not all," I said, pulling up one final document. "While I was tracking the money, I found something else. Something worse." What I discovered during my investigation had shocked even me. Karen hadn't just stolen my money. She'd been embezzling from her real estate clients for years. Earnest money deposits that never made it into escrow. Closing costs that mysteriously increased at the last minute. A pattern of fraud that stretched back at least 5 years. "She's been running a Ponzi scheme," I explained, showing them the spreadsheets I compiled. "Using new client deposits to cover up missing funds from previous transactions. My money was probably used to plug holes when things got tight." "No," Mom whispered, shaking her head. "There must be some mistake. Karen would never." She was cut off by the sound of tires screeching in the driveway. Moments later, Karen burst through the door, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. "Don't listen to her," she screamed, pointing at me. "Alex is lying. She's jealous because I've made something of myself while she plays soldier." Dad stood up slowly, his voice deadly quiet. "The only thing you've made of yourself is a thief and a fraud." Karen's face crumpled. "Daddy, please, I can explain everything. We just got in over our heads. Brian's business deals went bad. We were about to lose the house." "So you stole from your sister?" Mom's voice was sharp with disbelief. "From your own clients?" "I was going to pay it all back," Karen insisted. "Once the market improved. Once Brian's investments paid off." "Like the investment in that crypto scheme last year?" I interrupted. "Or the failed restaurant franchise before that? Face it, Karen. You and Brian have been living beyond your means for years, using other people's money to fund your lifestyle." She whirled on me, eyes blazing. "You don't understand. You've never understood what it takes to maintain a certain position in society. The right house, the right schools for the kids, the right social circles. And that gives you the right to steal." Dad's voice boomed through the room. "To betray your sister's trust while she's serving her country." Karen's response was cut off by the sound of more cars pulling up outside. Through the window, I could see several police vehicles and what looked like FBI agents approaching the house. "What did you do?" Karen whispered, her face draining of color. "Like I said at your house, financial crimes against service members are a federal offense. And when the FBI started looking into those crimes, they found all your other fraudulent activities." I stood up, straightening my uniform. "They've probably already picked up Brian at his office." As if on cue, Karen's phone buzzed with a text. She read it and swayed on her feet, looking like she might faint. "They're freezing all our accounts, even the kids' college funds." "The college funds you filled with stolen money?" I asked quietly. There was a knock at the door. Mom started crying softly as Dad went to answer it. Karen stood frozen in the middle of the room, her designer outfit and expensive jewelry suddenly looking like the costume they were, props in a performance of success that was about to end. The next few hours were a blur of federal agents, questions, and Karen being led away in handcuffs. She didn't resist, didn't make a scene. The perfect facade had finally cracked completely, leaving nothing but shame and consequences. Brian, it turned out, had cracked immediately under questioning. He'd thrown Karen under the bus, claiming she handled all the finances and he knew nothing about the fraud. But the investigators had found emails proving otherwise. They were both going down. In the aftermath, sitting in our parents' kitchen over cups of coffee that had gone cold, Mom finally asked the question that had been hanging in the air. What about the children? My niece and nephew, innocent victims in their parents' schemes. I thought about them constantly while building my case, wondering if I was wrong to destroy their comfortable life. They'll stay with Brian's sister for now, I said quietly. She's already agreed to take them. And I've arranged for their college funds to be replaced. Mom looked up sharply. But your money's gone. Not all of it. I pulled out another document, a statement from a separate account Karen hadn't known about. I always kept an emergency fund hidden, even from her. It's not as much as what she stole, but it's enough to make sure the kids don't suffer for their parents' crimes. Dad reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're a better person than she deserves. The truth was, I wasn't doing it for Karen. I was doing it for those kids, and for the values our parents had tried to instill in both of us. Honesty, integrity, taking care of family the right way. Over the next few months, the full scope of Karen's crimes came to light. Dozens of victims came forward, many of them fellow military families who trusted her because of our connection. The total amount stolen was well over $1 million. Karen and Brian both took plea deals rather than face trial. She got 8 years in federal prison, he got 5. Their assets were seized, the house sold to help repay victims. My own stolen money was eventually partially recovered through asset forfeiture, though I insisted most of it go to the other victims who'd lost everything. I stayed in Fayetteville after my discharge, renting a small apartment and starting a new career in cybersecurity. Every weekend, I took my niece and nephew to visit their mother in prison. Karen was different there, humbled, stripped of her pretenses. Sometimes I caught glimpses of the sister I used to know, the one who existed before greed and social climbing consumed her. One visit, about a year into her sentence, she finally gave me what I'd been waiting for, a genuine apology. I'm sorry, she said softly, tears rolling down her face. Not just for the money, but for betraying you. For becoming someone who could do that to her own sister. I reached across the prison visiting room table and took her hand. I know. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. That would take more time, more proof that she really changed. But it was a start. The irony wasn't lost on me that my military intelligence training, skills Karen had dismissed as plain soldier, had ultimately brought about justice. Sometimes the very things people underestimate about you become your greatest strength. Life settled into a new normal. Mom and Dad threw themselves into helping raise their grandchildren, trying to instill better values than their parents had lived by. I found purpose in helping other fraud victims, using my experience and skills to prevent others from going through what I had. And Karen, she spent her days in prison teaching other inmates about financial literacy, trying to prevent them from making the same mistakes she had. It wasn't the life she'd imagined for herself, but maybe it was the life she needed, one stripped of pretense, focused on genuine value rather than appearances. Looking back now, I realize that karma doesn't always look like revenge. Sometimes it looks like justice tempered with mercy, like lessons learned the hard way, like family bonds tested and reformed into something stronger, if less perfect than before. My sister stole my life savings, but in doing so, she lost something far more valuable, her integrity, her freedom, and years of her children's lives. In the end, the price she paid was far higher than any amount of money. As for me, I learned that sometimes the greatest victory isn't in making someone pay for their crimes, but in remaining true to your own values even when others betray them. The money could be replaced, but the strength I found in standing up for what's right, that was priceless. 5 years later, I finally bought my own home, a modest but comfortable place not far from our parents. The down payment came from my new emergency fund, built slowly and honestly. When I handed over the check at closing, I thought about all the lessons learned on the way to this moment. Karen will be released next year. She's already talking about making amends, about building an honest life. I hope she means it this time. But either way, I know who I am and what I stand for. Sometimes that's the most valuable thing you can save.